Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our very first virtual masterclass. I just wanted to introduce myself and to my colleague Bronwyn. Bronwyn, are you there?
Hi, everyone.
We're just waiting for one or two people to come through, but it's a really nice small group today. It's about the same class that either Bron and I do at the different business colleges. So it's a really good business solutions workshop that we can do. I'm going to take some questions within each section. I'll go through those. Bronwyn, is there anything you want to say before we start? And then I'll get going.
Yeah, so thank you for joining us all this morning. We are going to be going through the questions that we've gathered through the various processes leading up to this that all of you have seen through. But we've got a bit of time at the end. We can always take some live ones too. If you've got anything to add to the conversation, just make sure that when you're using the chat that you're selecting everyone, so everyone that's here on this session can all see rather than just sending the questions to the panelists. And hopefully you get some insights out of today. And over to you, Dion. Might as well kick it off.
Great, thanks. So what we did, just for everybody, but you've obviously put some questions in as well, is we just said, what is the biggest challenge that you're facing now as a business owner? And we were targeting specifically small and medium enterprises. And the questions came in thick and fast. So what we've done is we're obviously not going to be able to answer every single question in detail. But as we said on the website, we have clustered the different questions into about 6 sections today. So how the class is going to work is we're going to go through each section. I've got 2 specialists, apart from Bronwyn as well, who's going to will be coming up to handle 3 separate sections. We'll just go over some of the questions that you've asked so that you know what the context of that is. And then we're going to do a quick Q&A at the end of each section. So whether it's marketing, whether it's about finances, you can ask that specifically. And then if we have some time at the end, we can do a generic one. I'm going to also be quoting from a report which was just done in July, so just last month. It's a really, really very current report. It's the Global Web Index report, which they've done over 17 countries. And basically, it's a coronavirus research in terms of consumer insights and consumer mindset and where we're going with that. So quite an extensive one, around about sort of 15,000 respondents to this. So it's a good snapshot of what the world is starting to feel. And I think those will be interesting. And I've inserted some of those stats in between each section so you'll be able to see. So let's just kick off. And if you've been following our website, essentially, you've got what we've been saying is that we're reaching a second wave of economic impact. And what I mean about that is, I think 4 months, gosh, we're 5 months into lockdown now. 3-4 months ago when we first went into lockdown, everybody was in kind of scrambling in a survival mode to try and get what lockdown meant. So whether it was trying to go online, trying to work remotely, obviously hospitality sectors, restaurants and all those were really, really battling to try and see how they could change or pivot their business model into takeaways, into frozen foods, all of those kind of things. So it was what we're starting to see now is a long haul towards the end of the year, and we're understanding that this is not going to change for the foreseeable future for at least the 6 to 8 months. And we had better make a plan to just get on with life. So the first thing I want to just deal with is supply chain disruption. So when we first went into lockdown, one of the first things that became very, very apparent around the world was the reliance on a supply chain that was linked to China. So 2 of the questions that we received, one is saying retailing is trading in a new way and customers are shopping differently. Products and materials to create products that would have previously come from China are now being delayed or cancelled, and we aren't making any orders that we used to make and therefore decline in our business. The other question that I've put here is our customers are not having business as usual, so we're actually not accepting delivery of product. This question came from a healthcare sector, and are either not ordering now or cancelling existing orders placed. Some of our customers have closed down, so this is a generic problem that we're having there. So what we're trying to advise is and it's not an instant fix, but I have got a case study of a reimagining of not only a business model, but of a supply chain. And that is a restaurant here in Johannesburg. It's one of the sort of success stories to have managed a restaurant that has managed to either do sort of delivery services or frozen foods. But just recently, Pronto in Craig Hall in Johannesburg, an Italian restaurant, has opened a deli. So they've converted the restaurant into a deli, into retail. And what the owner, Natasha, who's on the screen now, said was the change of the switch has given her an opportunity to connect with Italian food suppliers across Johannesburg. So she sources high quality ingredients, food items, award-winning olive oils, pastas, cheeses, all of those kind of things. And she said what it's really done is started to reconnect and rethink that supply chain to be a more local one. And she says, we are committed to supporting local small-scale farmers and producers along with small businesses and women-owned businesses. And I think especially with the decimation of a lot of our smaller industries, we need to support our local industry. So there's one suggestion to do that. Overall, on our website is another article that says we're moving from VUCA to Barney. So if you've been with any executives, it's executive speak or it's business college speak, VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And that's always been used in the context of disruption with technology or the fourth industrial revolution. This article that we can put that up on the chat. It's entitled How Business Can Reorganize for an Unpredictable World. They suggest a new acronym called Barney, meaning it stands for brittleness, that is bitter as well, brittleness, anxiety, non-linearity, and incomprehensibility. That's quite a mouthful, but basically the article states that businesses would look generally to a linear model of how the world worked, and that's good up to a point, they say, and that point at which it ceases to be good is the one we've now reached, and definitively over the past couple of months. So we have reached that point. And from that global web index, they said out-of-home leisure spend remains under strong scrutiny. They said 4 in 10, so almost 50% of those respondents expect to eat out at restaurants less frequently. I'm sorry for that bad news if you're a restaurateur, after the pandemic over. And it says, and this figure is trending up to 13 out of the 17 markets where they started canvassing. So the restaurant industry is really going to be in for the long haul. What the article did, and I think this is interesting, this is another piece of research that we tapped upon. It's a collaboration between Capita Consulting and Wired Content Hub. And basically they grouped together a whole lot of business leaders from law, hospitality, the tech sector, all the way through to finance, retail, and private equity. So it's a really large and diverse bunch of business leaders. And they said, what are the prospects for businesses and how are they planning to adapt for a COVID-centric economy? And they boiled it down to 6 points. And I'll go through the 6 points, and you'll see that the 6 points actually can be clumped into 2 big sectors. So the first one is basically saying that the pandemic has been a catalyst for changes that were already there or technologies that were already there. And basically what we need to do is match the velocity, and that is what you need to try and do, is try and match the speed of this change. And that velocity matching is the new survive or thrive factor. The second one is saying, understanding that all metrics of the past have literally been washed away. So you've got to wipe the slate clean, and they say there is zero basing at work. So they're calling it a rare opportunity. So looking at it as not as a problem, but an opportunity to zero base all your assumptions and forecasts that you might have made in your own business. Number 3 is an important one. And they're saying adapting to brittleness as well, and this non-linear and incomprehensible way of doing things. They said nurturizing socialization is paramount. So what I mean about nurturing socialization is basically saying, if you're in the hospitality sector, or restaurants or hotels, you now need to persuade both your staff as well as your guests that your services are really safe and able to use. Number 4 is resilience. And they just said all fixed costs are really literally under review now. You've got to look at your budgets. We've got a finance section coming up where we'll go more into that. But they said in this article, for the very first time in more than a decade, resilience now trumps efficiency. So it's kind of just all hands on deck, just whatever you can do to survive, do that for the next 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, but just make sure that you can keep the ship afloat, and then you can go on to efficiency and things afterwards. Number 5, linked to the socialization, is humanizing your business. At this point, I've written a lot of articles, they're on our website as well, about anticipatory grief and how that deals with it. We've got a small section about your workforce at the end of the class, which we can deal with this there, but basically your empathy chips. Empathy is the new goal. So whether it's your language that you're doing, the services, whatever you do in your business, empathy is forefront of how you need to kind of push the brand ahead. And the last one is, they said it's a sort of a summary of the top 5, but basically reorganization is underway and you have to reorganize your business. You can't just say we're going to open the business and hope that it's going to survive. You've got to rethink the business model and make sure that the reorganization and the structures are in place. So a few case studies here. So in the hospitality sector, hotels as well, because I think hotels are going to have a really difficult time in that socialization process of trying to get people to come to hotels to stay. So here are 2 examples of what's done differently. On the screen, you'll see a hotel. It's called the White Hotel in Brooklyn, the White Hotel in Brooklyn. I've actually been to this hotel, and what they've done is they've turned their hotel rooms into pop-up offices, and there's an opportunity. So for the parents who are working from home who just really need to try and get away and get some peace and quiet, if you're not at a co-working space or a flexible working space, then these hotels have opened their rooms as that. The other good idea, it's happened in Sweden. It's a hotel that has basically used each of their rooms as in-house dining, so private dining rooms. So you are keeping the restaurant in the hotel going and you are basically ordering room service, but they've set up a little dining room inside the hotel room. And should you wish, and for those lucky countries that you can, have a little drink. If you've drunk too much, you can actually stay overnight there. But the one thing about that socialization is I'm seeing sanitization as and trust and that reassurance as a new consumer currency. So the Hilton Hotel has collaborated, and we see a lot of collaborations in all the case studies that we've seen. The Hilton Hotel has actually collaborated, and that's a strange collaboration, but maybe not so much in this era, with Lysol, the disinfectant maker, and the Mayo Clinic, which is an online medical clinic. And they've basically come up with a new set of guidelines for cleanliness. So they put a door seal on each of the cleaned rooms. They removed pens and paper and all of those kind of things, and making sure that people understand that there are very, very high hygiene standards. Another stat from the World, that Global Web Index is, so vacation plans for the next year are dominated by domestic vacations. Almost 50% of respondents globally say it's either going to be a staycation or it's going to be a local one. So if you are in hospitality or in tourism, gun for a local market, because we're not going to be venturing overseas, and we're going to do that. And one of the things that Flux advises within using reassurance as a currency is, if you're a food provider or any other kind of public service company, is to really look and perhaps make a small video of your staff cleaning, of how your goods are being delivered, how you make sure that the sanitizing is above board. And I wanted to show you a quick video that I just found on the web. This is Burger King in France. It's a really funny one, and so injecting a little bit of humor into that socialization, but a very, very important message about how they're going to reopen and how they're going to keep things clean and making sure that it is up to sanitary protocols. So they've done this as an airline announcement, and it's very, very tongue-in-cheek, and even if you don't speak French, you'll get the gist of it because there's a bit of English in it.
Mesdames et messieurs, ici votre commandant de bord. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain speaking. Bienvenue chez le Roi Sandwich. Welcome to Burger King. Pour la sécurité de tous, merci de regarder le look adapt. Tous les membres de l'équipage portent des masques certifiés qu'ils changent toutes les 4 heures. All the people is sporting mask on the visage, but not the Halloween. Notre équipage doit aussi porter des gants. All l'équipage porting some gants, but not les gants de boxe. Du gel hydroalcoolique est disponible. Hydrogel is disponible, but it's not ketchup. Be careful. Nous ne préparons pas vos commandes avec des drones. We don't prepare with flying robots. Mais les distances de sécurité sont respectées. Distance is respect for my people. Dès votre arrivée à bord, l'équipage vous dirige vers les bornes. L'équipage is burning to you. Le paiement s'effectue par la pensée ou sans contact. The paying is with the force or no contact. Nous ne désinfectons pas le matériel au lance-flammes. Non, non, non. Attention, no lance-fire. We use pshit pshit. Mesdames et messieurs, merci de votre attention. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for écouting me. We wish you un bon repas and buenos dias a todos. PNC aux caisses. Vérification de la borne opposée.
So my favorite line in that is we don't use a flamethrower, we use psh, psh. I just think it's a really, really brilliant one, a little bit of tongue-in-cheek, but also a really important one to make sure that people understand the safety protocols that you as a business are doing. Then if you are in retail, you would have understood the term atmospherics, but things like scent branding, sonic branding, all of those kind of things. And I think that is become part of that reassurance as a currency way of doing things. So hotels around the world and some retailers have always had some scent branding. I'm not suggesting that you perhaps adopt odor disinfectant as your scent branding for your company, but it is along those lines. So, you know, retailers would know that even, you know, warmer temperatures makes people more relaxed in that environment. You linger longer. But I think you need to do all of these subtle hints to make sure that people understand where we're going. So what I want to do now is just look at the actual process of arranging or designing that experience during this lockdown. And there's been a lot of things about queues, about how you physically queue, a lot of companies going online. So what I want to do now is actually introduce a specialist here. I want to introduce Morné Fenter. Morné is he's the deputy head of the School of Creative Technologies at Open Window, and he's a lecturer in interaction design, otherwise also known as UX design, user experience. So he's helped establish and design one of the first bachelor degrees focusing on interaction design, and he's going to hopefully go through why this is important. And these are the questions we've got for this section. To expand into global markets on online services, so how is that UX experience deal with that? How has COVID changed the online client experience, short-term and long-term? And here we go with UX design and interaction design again. And another question was the establishment of working processes and systems. So from the Global Index report again, globally 50% of your customers around the world expect to shop online more frequently after this pandemic is under control. So Morné, are you with us, and could you come on screen?
Hi, Dion. I am. I don't know if I'm. If you can see my video, I can see myself here.
Yes, we can see you.
All right, great stuff. Hi, everybody, and thank you for the introduction, Dion. I appreciate that. Great. I'm going to try and address all of those things. I hope that I can do it justice, like you said, hopefully. So one of the things that you said now, as you were going through some of the changes that were happening and some of the case studies, there was one specific point that you made. You said empathy is forefront. And I think that that is really, if you take anything out of what I'm going to say now, that's actually the key point that all of this hinges on. So let's talk a little bit about like what user experience design, and shortly what interaction design has to do with those things. Now, it is a little bit of a possible like minefield to try and explain these terms, but I think I've got it down. So what I want the participants to do quickly for me is just to think of a time when you were maybe frustrated or delighted with some sort of product or service. Like think about the time that you maybe went to a restaurant and it was a really, really fun time, or maybe you went to a restaurant and you didn't like the fact that you couldn't pay with a card, or maybe you were on an online site and you were finding it hard to maybe, I don't know, search for a product or anything like that. Now, your feelings and the thoughts that you have about your interaction with that product or that service, whether it's a digital thing, a physical thing, whatever, that is user experience, essentially. Your experience, a user experience, is the perception or the outcome that a person has in their thoughts and their feelings as a direct result of their interaction with something. All right. So that's how I would define what a user experience is. It's literally the change in thoughts and feelings that somebody experiences when they are interacting with your product or your service. Now, you can think about this and think that, you know, we're having experiences all the time. Every time we pick up our phone, every time we go to the kettle to boil something, every time we like start a game console or anything in that line, these are all experiences. And whether you notice it or not, every time you interact with one of these things, there is a subtle or an overt change in your thoughts and your emotions and things like that. All right. Now that I've kind of nailed down what it means to kind of have an experience with something, I think we can now talk about what user experience design actually means. I would suggest that user experience design is the act of curating or directing how a person will perceive an interaction with a product or service. Essentially, through user experience design, you're trying to influence how a person comes out the other side having interacted with your product or your service. You're trying to engender some sort of positive change or some sort of affectation in the user or in your customer for that matter. And really, user experience design is about two fundamental things. One, it's about understanding your user and their mindset, or your customer in this instance, user and customer, you can use whichever you want. So it's about understanding your user and their mindset. And then secondly, it's about reacting to that understanding and making decisions in your product and in your service that actually addresses those aspects of your user. So firstly, how do we understand our user and their mindset? This comes down to empathy. This comes down to some research. This comes down to talking to your customers and the people that are using your product and your services. It's really about understanding how they are coming to your product, to your service, the things that they're expecting, the emotions that they have, the beliefs that they have. All of these things is a part of empathy. It's about really understanding how your user is approaching your product or your service. And then once you've gotten this understanding, it's about saying, all right, I know how people are thinking or how they're feeling when they're coming to my shop. In COVID times, it might be very anxious. So how are we acting and what decisions are we making to make sure that people are less anxious? How are we addressing the mindset that the user has when they come to our shops? Now, I just want to make a quick distinction here. A lot of people think that when you are designing services or products, that when a service is functional or a product is functional and does what it says it does on the box, that's good enough. If I go to my kettle and I boil the kettle and the water is warm, that's great. Then obviously that's going to be a great user experience. But truthfully, that's not really true. We've kind of gone beyond the scope of just functionality, and we are now, a product shouldn't only just be functional, but it should be emotionally pleasurable. It should be satisfying. It should be an emotionally positive experience, really. And I mean, how do you do that with a kettle? You've got to ask the people at Le Creuset, for instance, how they do that with a kettle. But I think that illustrates in my mind, very clearly what user experience is and how user experience design plays into a product or a service. Now, you might also ask, what is interaction design? Now, interaction design is the design of interfaces that people engage with in order, with digital products or physical products. So interaction design is a subset of user experience design. And it's really about designing how people go about engaging with your service or your product through a user interface, or how you're designing the space layout in a physical service or anything like that. So I think that that kind of covers how user experience design, and interaction design fits together. The next thing that I want to address very quickly is why user experience is important now, and why it's important now specifically. I don't think that I have to say much in that regard, but I do think that I'll just illustrate that a little bit. We've moved from a time where people expect products and services to simply be functional, like I said earlier. And we've moved to a space where customers and users look at themselves as the center point of products and services. I think that a product or a service that goes beyond simply just offering its basic functionality and goes into a space where it can almost anticipate the needs of somebody, where it can feel make people feel like they are seen and that they are individuals, and most importantly, that the service is responding to them as individuals. Think about something like Spotify. When you listen to music and podcasts on Spotify, Spotify gives you recommendations and says, these are based on the things that you've listened to. What that small act does is it simply lets the user know that Spotify is aware of their listening habits and is reacting to them, not as a generic person that's using their platform, but rather as an individual with thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and they are trying to react to those thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And that, truthfully, is why user experience is important and will continue to be important. It's about how we react to the customers and the users' needs, and how we make them feel seen, and importantly, anticipate how they are coming into our service and meet that anticipation. I hope that that covers the terms and the questions that you guys might have had about that specific subject matter. Dion, I don't know if there's if you want to direct the questions from here, or if there's something else that you want me to do, or something that I need to clarify. Let me just open the chat here. All right, I see that there's a post for the questions. I see in the chat here that people have mentioned the games in the background. Yes, there are board games.
Sorry, Monet. I just had my my microphone on mute. Thanks. I was just saying, I think if anybody has not kind of twigged onto why interaction design or UX design is so important, generally, I think they would now, and I think especially now. And I'm glad that you also join the dots between empathy and that frustration of that, because I think I've certainly had a lot of experiences now doing online shopping or anything like that, where the experience has really been bad. I don't know if there's any specific questions that are in the Q&A board, but
I don't see anything there. But Dion, just to respond to what you were saying there, I think the biggest mistake that a business owner can make right now when trying to address the user experience of their business and to design that experience is making assumptions about what they think users or their customers want. The important thing about empathy is about stepping outside of yourself and really going down to the ground and talking to the people using your products and services and asking it and finding out from them how they are perceiving it. If they say they don't like an aspect, it's not because they're wrong. It's something that that's just how they perceive it. It's something that you need to react to and that you might need to change. I think that the biggest mistake I see when people are trying to design for other people and design experiences for other people is that they are reacting to assumptions that they think their customers or their users are working with, and those assumptions are not necessarily true.
I think that's a really, really important choice, because one of the biggest themes that are coming through for the session is to rethink what your relevance of your business is to a changed mindset. And
Yes.
even before this, what you were saying is just assuming what the mindset is. Now more than ever, the consumer mindset has changed so radically. So it is about kind of reassessing. It's not just my doors are open and we can trade, but how are we going to trade, and what is that mindset out there?
Exactly.
Monet,
I do see that there is a question there.
Class to give.
I'm happy to leave it at that. I do see that there is a question that somebody's asking in the chat, if I could address that very fast.
Okay, sure.
Are we running out of time?
No, you can go ahead.
Right. I see that Rob asks, he says, hi Monet, any thoughts on some good steps to take when wanting to better understand customers in a better way? Actually, I do have some strategies and tactics that you can maybe follow. These are basic things, but I think these are good starts. Basically, I think a good place to start is something very simple like surveys, basic interviews with customers. If you run a shop or an online service, sending out a survey to ask people what they've had frustrations with, or to kind of maybe talk to people coming into your shop and just kind of finding out about their mindset and how they're feeling and what they, how they're approaching this thing. So interviews and surveys are a good way to kind of get information. But once you've gotten that information, it's important to comb through it and see, what can I use here? What can I react to? What's the insights that I've gained from this information? And what changes or decisions can I make to react to this? Other things you could do, possibly, if you've got an online platform, an online service, you can set up a basic user test, find people that mimic your customer base, and ask them to complete certain tasks on your online platform, and see where they struggle, or see where they don't, where they are making mistakes. If you see that 3 or 4 people are making the same pitfall, that's obviously something that you need to address. So there's a bunch of basic strategies, but really what you're looking for is, you're just looking for some strategies to uncover information about how people are approaching your business, and then reacting to that information and the insights that you've gained. So I see that the second question kind of also talks about the surveys and online things like that. So I think I've kind of covered that question as well.
Yes, you have. Okay, great. Monet, thank you very, very much for your input. We have put, if people are interested in reaching out to Open a Window as well, or find out more about interaction design, and I think the importance of that, we've got those links up in the chat. So anybody who's interested in just contacting Monet after this, then please go ahead and do that. I think it's really important for your business right now. Monet, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate you coming through, and you can dash off to your class now. So
thank you so much, Dion. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Have a good rest of the panel. Thanks a lot.
Yes, great.
Bye.
Thanks. Okay. All right, on to the next one. And this is where I'm going to bring Bronwyn on, because this is a large section. And while Bronwyn's our future finance whiz, she's also a marketing whiz as well, got great background into that. Bronwyn, before I let you start off and just talk over some slides that I've got here, just some of the questions that were coming in, there were just so many things that were related to marketing, how on earth to authentically market your business right now without seeming heartless. Our business is spending money on marketing right now in uncertainty. How to hold the attention of your market audience. This is a B2B business online where everybody's fighting to be seen. There's just this bottleneck online and everything. How do you create trust and consumer engagement when your customers don't reach out often, and the tools and all the tools at your disposal are used by the least of your customer? And again, creative ways of engaging with clients, different marketing platforms, and the like. There was in that poll, they said fewer than 15 customers disapprove of brands advertising as normal at this time, but I would say not inappropriately, as we've heard with that case study with Nikon. Bronwyn, I'm going to just go over some of the slides that you selected, and just let me know to push on to the next one there. So over to you.
Yeah, all good. So you can fire up the first one over there. What we've done is we just pulled out a couple of case studies. I thought that this was, of course, a very South African one. And I think the first thing to realize with marketing right now is that every problem is an opportunity that you can then connect with your customers over. And as much as businesses are having problems at the moment, your customers are having them too. And this very South African example of how Sprite put together the pineapples, the yeast, and the sugar so that people could start brewing their own home beverages when South Africa's lockdown prohibited the sale or movement of alcohol from place A to place B. And I think this is a great example of moving with the market and being very quick to the mark, because they had this display up within hours of the news of the alcohol bans coming into place. They're very quick to react to the trends of people starting to talk about things like pineapple beer being made at home. So you've got to be reaction or very fast on the uptake with this. And always focus on, once again, solving that problem, meeting that need in a creative way. So when you've got this much tighter creative brief, it's actually going to serve as being a catalyst for creativity to play within that space to see what you can do. And as you can see, this is very, very low tech marketing. This wasn't a huge budget, didn't require an ad agency. It just required taking some initiative and meeting that consumer with what they needed, where they wanted it. So really going back to basics. That's the real basics of marketing. It's getting the right product to the right person at the right time, and a little bit of a sense of humor. It doesn't go too far awry either. So you can move on to the next one there, Dion. Yeah, so when it comes to communication, I think this is an absolutely brilliant case study. We got a lot of questions that came in asking, how do we connect with customers? What should we say? What should our social media strategies be? And obviously these online strategies become more important when you suddenly don't have access to a lot of the marketing channels you might have had before. Outdoor, airport, cinema, all these things don't make sense when you don't get customers going to those places. And as always, it comes back to meeting your customers where they are. And the steak case study is a really subtle case study, but it's a really great example of how we can tie a lot of the trends that we've seen of successful marketing and good businesses dealing in crisis periods together. So I think one of the massive trends that Dion and I have been looking at since Corona news broke and all the rest of it is the trend towards kind capitalism or empathetic marketing, and businesses connecting with their customers on more than a purely transactory basis. And that also needs to filter through to your social media presence and the way you're doing your comms with your customers. If you are simply selling all the time, you're not very interesting to talk to. Nobody wants a relationship with someone that's only one-sided. It's always pushing to get something from you. Relationships have to be reciprocal. There has to be give and take. And once again, it comes back to spotting the gap in the market, spotting the opportunity, and riding the news, because that's where you get, of course, your free word of mouth, your free reach. This is how social media marketing works. It needs being interesting and being, once again, at the right time and riding the wave when it is available. And Steak has done this beautifully. So they are a sort of frozen meat product from the United States. So about as low on the nutritional scale as you can really get. So frozen processed foods they're selling. And you might think, why is this a great brand as a case study for social media marketing or marketing comms? But what has been particularly good with this brand is that they've decided not to talk about selling steak on their social media feeds. Instead, what they've done is they've spotted a problem that everyone in the world is struggling with at the moment, the problem of the so-called infodemic or fake news, or the huge divisions that are being caused by misinformation between various different political views, ideologies, and just general all the fighting and divisions going on online, usually due to mis and disinformation. What they've done is created a brand persona that has almost become a pop philosopher that ends up trying to build bridges and reduce divisions between ideological divides on social media. So let's talk about stepping into a gap that very little people are playing in, because obviously most brands, most accounts, most people, when you play on social media, it's easy to get followers and to get engagement by sort of baiting the trolls on the different sides and by escalating tensions. There's very few people playing in that middle space, and with gentleness, with humor, and with a huge amount of intellect too. So we've kind of got this pop philosopher steak brand that has done very, very well on social media. You can go follow them on Twitter if you want to see what I'm talking about there. But they've been so clever to tap into the current zeitgeist, to tap into all those challenges that every consumer is facing at the moment, and to really ride the wave. But what they had done too, which also worth speaking about, is that they've been building this brand, sort of sub-tier of their brand for some time now. They didn't just whip it out because COVID happened and everyone went into lockdown, which means they had some credibility and some authenticity behind this communication strategy. And that, of course, is the other side of marketing and of comms in difficult times. Consumers are very, very aware of sort of crass capitalization on tragedy. So you don't want to be a brand that is piggybacking or woke washing, as they call it, or greenwashing, or jumping onto the bandwagon of a cause, just sort of tacking a hashtag Black Lives Matter hashtag onto your posts. That doesn't ring true. People are looking for authenticity. They're looking for brands that are going to solve problems, solve their needs, and to connect with people as human beings. And that's probably another trend that we've definitely seen, is that it's very easy to forget about that, to forget about the fact that at the end of the day, you are selling to a warm-blooded human being, and the margin for any business is in the mess and in the magic and in the messy human interactions. That's where profit margins come from. In a perfectly automated, perfectly competitive world, there would be no profit margins. So follow the human beings and connect with people on a personal level, and that should go some ways to making your social media and online comms interactions that much more rewarding for both you and your customers. We can move on to the next one there, Dion. So this is a similar example of this empathetic marketing and connecting with the need, reacting to the need, with one of the businesses that we do quite a lot of work with at Workshop 17. They're a co-working space. They've got properties across South Africa. And what they were very good at also in the midst of the COVID crisis is understanding that they work with and for human beings. What they did was they started setting up for their co-working tenants, which now obviously weren't going into their buildings. They still wanted to connect with that community and connect with them as real people. And they started offering things like healthy food classes online and meditation classes and health and wellness initiatives to try and make sure that the people that they are serving are being served through more than just a mere transaction. So they're not just collecting rent from their tenants. They're trying to make sure that these businesses are healthy and happy, or run by healthy and happy entrepreneurs too. So it was a really great example of being quick off the mark, being empathetic, and being very, very human with those connections. We can move on to the next one there. So this is probably the big one. So to move track away from that sort of empathetic marketing and kind capitalism way of connecting with consumers, I think this is more of a warning to businesses when it comes to dealing with doing business in the digital sphere. We need to understand that we need to diversify, much like we wouldn't put all of our financial assets into one basket. We want some diversity there because that spreads our risk, particularly for small businesses. And it becomes a real problem when you start to see this from the underside, is that more and more of our online interactions are taking place on platform-based businesses or two-sided marketplaces. So whether you are a small SME that connects with your customers on Facebook, whether you're an influencer that's brought up a capitalized little business for yourself by selling products and influencer marketing on Instagram or TikTok, or whether you're a publisher that's publishing on platforms like Facebook, like Apple, whatever it may be, you have to understand that if it's not your platform that that business is built on, it's putting a lot of risk into your business, because what platforms give, platforms can take away. And platforms really are, at the end of the day, toll collecting, rent-seeking businesses. So they charge a fee and get in between a business and that business's consumer. It's not to say you shouldn't use these tools, but you should be very, very aware that if something goes wrong with the platform, if the platform changes its T's and C's, or if the platform suddenly gets banned in your country, as is what is happening with TikTok now across the world, many different governments are banning it, you can end up in a very dangerous situation where you've built your business on what turns out to be shifting sands, and that rug can be ripped out of your entire business model, leaving you in a very bad predicament. And you've seen this with influencers on TikTok in the US who have been frantically posting posts, telling people to connect with them on Instagram or Snapchat or YouTube to try and sort of collect that following and make sure it stays with them. And that's on the sort of smaller side. On the bigger side, you've got very, very big businesses like Apple that are changing the ways that it works with partner businesses that have apps on its iOS platform. In fact, it's a bit ironic, but one of the other big platform businesses in the world, that would be Airbnb, is finding itself in a lot of trouble because Apple is saying it wants a cut of all of Airbnb sales because the Airbnb app is generating revenue from being hosted on the iOS platform. So if you've built a business expecting a profit margin of X and suddenly the platform starts charging a bigger rental and you haven't built a diversity of ways of connecting with your customers, or if you don't own that relationship with your end user, you can be in a lot of trouble. Also on the Apple case, last year, they did something similar when they started forbidding developers from collecting personal details from people through their apps. So previously, the developer was able to get access to personal data like that, the person who downloaded the apps, email address, contact address, location, all of those things. Apple started encrypting that information. So suddenly, that business was taken one step away from the end user again. So that's more of a word of warning going out. Think about using these tools, but also be aware of the risks that you get. As Dion was saying earlier, there's a difference between efficiency and resilience. There's always a trade-off, and just make sure you understand the risks there. As a person who has a marketing background, I always like to say, try and get as close to your customer as possible. Try own that relationship. Don't try automate that real relationship away. Because if you can automate the relationship with your end user, you're that much more replaceable by your next competitor that has a slightly cheaper price or product. And I think that was all that I had there. So over to you, Dion.
Great, thanks, Bronwyn. And I think that just comes out, and it's come out in the chat as well. Alina's noted it as well. That just empathy is coming out, and I think those the steak gum is a fantastic case study in terms of just what to do with your content and social media and marketing. I haven't seen anybody with any questions. We can, Bronwyn will be here till the end, so I mean, we can also call on Bronwyn again. What I wanted to do, just to end this here, before I call up Lynn, we're going to go into the finance section, which was also a really big section as well. But thanks, Bronwyn, and I think you'll also agree this was a part of that empathy one. When I was researching that video with Burger King France, this is what they did. So that was when they started opening their stores. So what they did before the full opening was this campaign where they gave you in an infographic all of the ingredients you needed to do to make a Whopper, to make a big Le Big Fish, Le Steakhouse, and everything like that. It was just a really nice bit of humor, but also saying, here, you can do that. And what they always say, you know, you can always steal the recipe, but you can't, it will never taste the same. But it was just a very nice way of Burger King to say, here you go, this is how we actually make it, and these are the components that you need. So thanks, Bronwyn. All right, so I'm going to go on to the next one. So this is a big one for everybody. It was just so apparent here. Some of the questions: how do we adapt our projects and still bring in funds? Adjusting to capacity to meet fluctuating demand, generating venue, cash preservation and safety. That came over and over and over again. Clients cancelling long-standing contracts with them, so cash flows go on through their massive short-term cash challenges. There are some questions that said, we're a good business and we know that once we get through the lockdown, we will be very, very successful, but how do you do this here? From the Global Web Index, another stat here, delaying big purchases remains one of the biggest financial responses to the crisis. 80% of global respondents say they are going to hold back on buying any big purchases. So, you know, that's a really, really big one. And 6 in 10 globally say the outbreak has an financial impact on that. So with that said, I'm going to invite Lynn. Lynn Marais is from a company called Celete Money Management, or Celete Management. Celete, just up front, Lynn has really been a guiding light for me and for Flux as a small business. She helps manage finances for many small to medium enterprises and some big ones as well. But I wanted to bring her along because she's given me sage advice over the years, and just to talk through a couple of points. Lynn, can you come up onto screen, please?
Good morning. Can you hear me and see me?
Yes, great.
Great.
And I've just put up slides that you wanted to talk through.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Dion. Thank you, Flux, for the opportunity. Awesome to always be able to share the slightly more mundane aspect of your talks, and that is financial management, which is always not the most exciting, but there are tools and tips which we at Chileti have been able to share with our customer during this time. And we also definitely believe that with every bit of chaos, we always find opportunities. And one of the opportunities we found is this concept of housekeeping, bringing stability, looking for a stable position within your company as far as your financial management goes. And 47% of businesses in South Africa are small, medium enterprises. And so we have to, as a workforce, survive this chaos and the challenges that are ahead of us. We are most definitely, and as has been already discussed, living in different times to anything I think any of us have ever experienced in the past. What is important to us is that all previous methodologies when it comes to any form of financial management or financial structure has to be rethought. This rethinking concept has come up before, and we have to have a look and go beyond what as our immediate money concerns. I think we've all been a little bit forced into the now and taking concept of what is actually happening, but we have to look beyond that, because for our businesses to survive, we have to say, what would post-COVID be? How can we change things now to bring us into a stronger post-COVID? We've all gone through a number of aspects where we've gone through the slow payments to customers, drop in sales of revenue, accessing relief, looking at staff redundancies, and all these have been the now factor. How do we chase and get ourselves stabilized? But ideally, it's more important to look at the future and what are those little tidbits that we can do. We all have sound financial structures in place, or we should, or we hope we do. We all need to remain completely compliant at this time, because we are engaging with people who want to know what our financial numbers are. And as business owners, that's a good place for us to start. We need to know day to day what we are doing and how we are going to get that. And like I said in here, forget the old rules, be vital at the moment, keep the important relationships, do the hard work, build systems for the future, build for post-COVID, take your financial realm to the future, that when you go through a chaotic situation again, you are going to be in a stable situation. You'll be able to be resilient and to get through it. A couple of little tidbits we've picked up during this point and we've shared with our customers, good habits that you can form for both your personal as well as your business, habits that you can put your financial housekeeping in good order, bring in that stability, know that you have a good financial background. Create a short-term operational financial plan. So I know sometimes as small business owners, the finance side of it, the finance realm, we tend to park and we deal with it when we have to. But in a time like this, if you can get yourself into a habit of creating that financial plan, it would be so much better for you to understand what is working and what isn't. We believe that you should look at a 13-week rolling cash flow forecast. 13 weeks gives you a good idea. Maintain this on a daily and on a weekly basis. Build a reserve fund within your company. Start small, but start. That's the concept. Don't park it until tomorrow or deal with it tomorrow. Deal with it now. Start building that reserve fund, both in your personal finances or in your business finance. One thing that works really well for our clients is we suggest the concept of looking at having 3 bank accounts. A day-to-day operational account, a tax reserve or VAT reserve or provisional tax, and then a rainy day reserve account. And if you can try and formulate those, your rainy day is your investment account, you park some money, you try and throw a little bit of excess income into that. That is where you will go when you come into a chaotic situation like this. And your business will have that opportunity. And even in your personal life, it's important to have that investment, park your tax, and keep your operations. On your operations, it's highly important, especially in a time like this, and I cannot reiterate it enough, is to make sure you look at your bank account on a daily basis. It sounds time consuming, and possibly it is, but do a bank reconciliation on a daily basis. Know your figures, know where you are. It will give you the strength to get through these times. Record your transactions on a day-to-day basis. Know your income, know where you're going to be getting your money, what your cash flow is going to be out. Be more aware of your financial realm within your business. When you do a daily bank reconciliation, of course, you're going to find, and that's one of the most important things, is that you can cull so many things. We all let those little amounts slip in, little debit orders that run, something that you subscribe to, continued for the last 15 years at 50 Rand. It gets missed. You're not aware of it. You're not sure what it is, what's going on. So with these reconciliations, with this cash awareness, with this management of your finances, if you do that, you'll be able to start those savings. Instead of wasting money, you're going to start your savings. You're going to have the account that's going to give you a rainy day situation. Outreach all the time to customers, staff, and suppliers. Let them know your status. Be aware that if you can't make a payment, it's always easier for us to hide under the covers. But I think engagement, communication, sharing partnerships is so important in a time like this. And then last of all, make sure that right now you are keeping your ideas and your opportunities somewhere. Because as business owners, we have got ourselves into so much extra that we're having to do during COVID, and so much more is being placed on us to actually run our business, manage our business, make sure we're in a financial situation, that you need to keep those ideas and opportunities, because sooner than later, you're going to want to reignite those and put those into post-COVID. But the time is now. Let's not fall back on the fact that we've got other things to deal with. For me, financial stability will give you that opportunity to have to do what else you have to do. And I cannot stress enough how important it is to know your figures, know your numbers, be compliant, and have a stable financial structure. Because if you've got that, it supports you in doing everything else that you need to do in a crisis situation. Thanks, Dion.
Great. Thank you so much, Lynn. Before I let you go, if there's any questions, please post them for Lynn. I can personally basically say that Lynn's idea of having different bank accounts, when I first, in the early days, when I first started Flux, gosh, this was like over a decade ago, one of the first things Lynn said to me was start a savings account, and every time you receive some VAT money, park your VAT money into the savings account. Because as a new and a young business owner, when I first started, every 2 months I would have that heart attack, and SARS would come up and say, come, pay your VAT. And I would have, sort of fettered it away. I would have paid it there. That has been for over a decade, the saving grace of just managing VAT, SARS, PAYE, all of the kind of boring stuff that business owners really, really don't want to do, but you have to do that. So it was really, really sage advice. So Lynn, let me just check the chat if there's any other things there. There's one here, Lynn, from any thoughts on assessing pivots during a crisis, a time when your core business is not operational? My reason for asking is the opportunity cost between new revenue and new school fees. Good one, Rob. And I'm going to deal with pivoting straight after Lynn. So Lynn, if you've got any advice for Rob.
Rob, I do believe that you're not alone in a situation like this. I've got a number of clients who are saying to me, I'm not prepared to pay this account or that account, be it workers' compensation, be it PAYE, be it VAT, because I actually at the moment I'm in an industry where I'm not working at all, and I don't believe it's necessary. I think you have to try to get through this crisis and any other crisis that your business might face in the future. You have to try to make the decision, and I think that's where I mentioned know your numbers. It's very important for you to sit down, to assess your business, to have a look at it in all honesty and say, where am I going to be post-COVID? Because then that will enlighten you about how to actually process yourself right now, whether you should be engaging in trying to find capital investment, financing from banks, finding partnerships to sustain you through the difficult time, because post-COVID or post any crisis, your business will survive and your business has got an opportunity of being active and being there. So it's the same as when it comes to employment. It was one of the questions I said to a number of clients. You know, it's all very well to cut back on staff, but what do you do when you open your business? How do you re-employ and you talk about school fees, the re-employment of a staff member who hasn't been with you, the school fees you've got to pay to actually get them up to scratch is far more than if you actually sustain somebody during a difficult time, because you knew at the end of this you were going to be operational. So I know it's really difficult, and right now finding capital injection, finance support are the most difficult things for businesses in a position like yours, is how do I get through it? But I do believe, and I think it's really important for business owners, that if you have that passion and belief and your business has maybe just gone through a crisis right now because of this, you need to try and sustain it and get it through it. Open up those channels of communication, be it with your suppliers who can support you and help you, be it with your bankers, they might be there for you, and within yourself. I think you need to be in a comfortable position to know that you want to inject money into the business to sustain you through the crisis. I hope that helps.
Great. Thank you so much, Lynn. We've also put Lynn's details up in the chat. So if you want to just continue, or if you thought of something afterwards, or you want some more of these tips, like I said, Lynn's really steered me through from being a young little company to 13 years going now. Her advice has really helped me with that. So Lynn, thank you for your time and thank you for your advice. And we really appreciate you joining us this morning. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dion. Thanks, everybody.
So just onto Rob's question as well, and just about pivoting. So I wanted to just give you a couple of case studies of how some people manage to pivot and get their businesses going. One of the big things that have been coming through, one of the questions was, how do you evolve traditional entertainment business to remain valid during or post-COVID? So here up on screen is a case study from a stand-up comic. So you think, well, that business is surely, just would have completely died. And what they said was that it's also a whole question about people were asking about sort of discounting or giving it away. So he said that they started this, him and his partner started the Nowhere Comedy Club. So you can Google the Nowhere Comedy Club. But basically said the question you ask is as important as the question you get. Instead of asking for the most people possible, Ben and I asked a different question. How can we be seen by the best audience possible? So they started out with the Nowhere Comedy Club. And they said, instead of just trying to give it sort of free online, they would really start to charge it, because they said if people are given free tickets, a lot of people disrespect that. But since they've done that, they launched the Nowhere Comedy Club online or virtually on April the 6th. And they've had, they said, with 3 shows staggered to accommodate different areas around the world. So they went completely global. And they said on the first day, we sold 600 tickets. And he said, I toured the world without leaving my home. Since the club's inception, they've sold over 15,000 tickets, averaging 1,000 tickets a week. So they've generated over $100,000 of income, and they've managed to really pivot out of that. Something from the classes that I always share, this next slide, is just the importance of, even if you're a small company and you're a startup, these are just examples of some online pivots that happened. Now, you'll probably only recognize the one on the right, which is Netflix. But Netflix also started in the early days as, how quaint is this, a DVD mail order company. Remember those things that you probably use as a drinks coaster now, but they were DVDs. The other two you would not recognize. The one in the middle, Audio, was a bit before its time, so timing is everything. They were a podcast subscription company, so we're kind of only entering the golden era of podcasts now, but they started as that in 2005 as Audio. They rethought their business model, and they streamlined it, reframed it, and now they're a little company called Twitter. On the extreme left, Bourbon was another social media company, and what they wanted to do, they had check-in features, photos, all of those kind of things, and it was just a little bit too complex. So what they did was they stood back and they streamlined, and just pared it down to the bare basics. And what Bourbon is called today is another little company called Instagram. So there are examples of very small startups that pivoted and changed their business models early on, and grew up to be giants. So the one big pivot that I want to put onto the radar for everybody today is just the contactless economy. This is just going to come through over and over and over and over again, from the payments you kind of do to the sort of the spacing of restaurants, of all of those kind of things. The contactless economy is growing and growing and growing. So just think about how your business is able to tap into it, no pun intended about tapping with the image there, but how do you ensure that you are part of that contactless economy going through the next 6 months and coming out of the pandemic, because those mindsets will be entrenched. Here's an example of a beer brand who did a brilliant campaign. They basically decided, it's called Dos Esquis, and they decided to create a 6-foot beer cooler. So it doubles up as a bench. It holds 12 cans of cans or bottles of beer. There's room for ice and everything, but basically it's a bench that you sit on, and it is 6 feet, the American distancing for social distancing, and you can still take it to your braai or wherever in the park, and you can social distance with your enormous cooler to do that. So here's where I want to just quickly depart and take you through some ideas about innovation. So the slides I'm going to show you is part of the classes I do with the business colleges, and it's on innovation and on how to get those innovative ideas there. So I'm not going to tell you how to pivot your business, because there's just too many different sectors here, but some of the questions we've got is what Rob asked: how do you pivot as a consultant when people can't afford us? I have little control over my business with retainer clients, but how do they keep me busy, but I still need to try and look into the future. A non-profit question, I think that came from Andre, who's in the audience. Our biggest challenge is growth and how best to respond incrementally to our strategic thinking. All of these are, whether it's a business model or actually the services or the products that you're doing, is about that. And what we talk to business leaders about in all of these classes is ambidextrous leadership. So you've got to, before the pandemic hit, every business was trying to keep some institutional memory at play, but also bring in new systems. Well, that, as I said, has been accelerated. So take this time, as hard as it feels, because it feels that you've got to be working and trying to rescue your business as much as possible. But there is that difference between not working on your business, but not working in your business, but on your business. So while things seem to be quite bleak, it is the opportunity to step back and say, how do we do things a little bit differently? And with that, you need eyes of a child. So it's to really rethink and bring in different opinions, aspects of people to do that. I went on a diversity and inclusivity conference in New York last year when you could travel. But one thing that stuck me, and I use it as a case study over and over again in all my classes for executives, is they were saying they were looking at overhauling all the business efficiency of a hospital in New York. And what they did was they did the normal things. They spoke to the doctors, the nurses, the administrative staff, and when they collated all the ideas and the research, they found that the best ideas actually came from the security guard that stood at emergency casualty. That security guard watched all of the comings and goings, watched people melt down, watched all the inefficiencies there. So not asking the doctors or the nurses, although that input was valuable, but it was actually the security guard that gave them the best insights. So my question to you is, in your organization, do you have a speak up culture? And you know, if you've been following Flux, that we are passionate about Gen Z and a younger, new way of thinking and new thinking models. And within especially larger corporate companies, I just see this kind of, not quite cancel culture, but a shut up and sit down because you don't know the business and you're young. So your ideas don't count. And therefore you get a fast churn in terms of retention. But the speak up culture is so important now, because especially if you have younger work employees there, they will understand digital realms much better than you, understand user experience about going online, all of those kind of things. Get as many outside opinions as possible, and I think you might have that light bulb moment. The other one that I always say to different companies is viewing customers differently. So I don't only mean your external customers, but with that, because this talk is part of our innovation studies, is customer experience is basically the closest output measure a company can get for their internal innovation. If your customer experience is really going well, you know that your innovation process is really, really good. The two go hand in hand. However, what I want to do is share is, if you are a company that's big enough to have different divisions, those divisions need to be viewed as customers as well. So your sales division and your marketing division should actually be viewing each other as customers, and the internal dynamics of viewing each other as customers will completely change the dynamics of how you deal with your external customers. And I think that's a really, really important one to think about. And the other is really about how you group your best talent within a company. So a lot of companies, they spread the talent across the board, and especially in times of crisis like now, you want to try and spread the talent across there. But there's a case study between Google and Apple of how they did things. And Apple, basically what they did was they concentrated their best talent that were in business critical projects or phases, concentrated the best talent there, and then dispersed them after that. And the case study here is that it took 600 Apple engineers fewer than 2 years to develop and debug the iOS 10, this is a while ago, versus 10,000 Microsoft engineers who took more than 5 years to develop, debut, and then ultimately trash their Vista program. So it's about reorganizing how your company works. And this is just one example of some of the processes that we cover. It's just to show you the different kinds of thoughts or mindsets you need, from a designer to entrepreneur to strategizer, to bring those things in. But there are five, what I want to highlight here are five things that you need in terms of good leadership and for teamwork. Psychological safety, so everybody is feeling safe that they can speak up and say, I think we should do this differently. Number two is dependability, making sure that everybody completes the work, quality work on time. Structure and clarity, if you are embarking on a new pivot, make sure that everybody knows what the expectations are and where you're going to go. And then the last two are meaning and impact, because I think especially with a younger workforce, everybody wants their purpose in that project to be very, very crystal clear, and everybody wants that impact as well. And just lastly on this one is just going from learning zones versus performance zones. So especially when I'm talking to executives, I say to them, when you run your company, you use the analogy of high-performing athletes. Athletes are in the learning zone, the training zone. They train 80, 90%, 95% of the time. They train, and they are in that learning zone. And the performance zone is when they go to that international race or meeting, match, whatever it is, and you perform brilliantly in that last 5 or even 2% of that time. Meanwhile, in business, and especially in times of crisis, we're spending 100% of our times in the performance zone, and we expect the results of long learning zones to kick in. So it's to switch that around, maybe not 90%, 10%, but definitely maybe a 50-50, and make sure that you are in that learning zone. I'm just going to cover one more last section before we end. There were just a few questions going on to that learning zone about employee well-being. Some of the questions that were asked is, what's the future of working in office space? Is it changing? How can I optimize my workforce to ensure that everybody's looked after in tough times? And how do we, A, keep a culture alive and strong, and B, stay connected organizationally and across teams while working from home? So, like I said, we have on our website a couple of articles that I've been writing about anticipatory grief, but this is one that one of our team members shared with Tumi, who's in the chat room, about being aware of 3 groups within your workforce. The worried well, the first one, number 2, the affected, and number 3, the bereaved, specifically in times of COVID. So the worried well are people, probably most of us here, you are suffering from anticipatory grief, but you're safe at home, you are able to work online, your life can carry on. The affected are those people, and the numbers are growing, and just within my own circle of family and friends, more and more people are thankfully not really, really ill, but they've all contracted COVID-19. So that's a different concern. And then there are the bereaved who have actually lost family members to the virus. You've got 3 different types of mindsets there. So when somebody comes into a workspace and says, oh, it's just so terrible that I can't smoke or I can't have alcohol, meanwhile, the person who is bereaving, that's a really big clash of dynamics. So it's that word that keeps coming over and over again in this class, is about empathy and what you need to be aware of to do that. So I just thought I'd share, this is just some different office perks that they've done. And so, for companies who give a catered lunch to the office, some people have been given vouchers. So it's a sort of a food delivery stipend, so they can order lunch at home. Team Pay, it's another company. What they've done is they've given their staff a stipend as well to set up a home office to do that. But I think the best takeout from this one is really about the perks that are normally targeted towards employees, and occasionally it's extended to family members. That has to be reversed now, and you have to consider what that family dynamic is of your employer, so that becomes a different empathetic perk with that. And then finally, really, it's just the future of office space. On our website, I've written something about office spaces, and we are seeing a very, very, very fast disconnecting of rental spaces, because we've been in lockdown for 4 months. A lot of small companies have said, well, this is working fine with us. We can still meet occasionally. So, we're working with, say, a Workshop 17. They're seeing a huge uptick in people joining them. Even big corporates are starting to fragment the way in which they do things. So smaller companies or smaller departments will be having something at a flexible working office. Others in my own circle of business owners, 3 or 4 have all given their leases, they've terminated their leases, and they are doing memberships and different ways of doing things. So the future of work is really, really going to kick in. I'm going to just end off here. There were some insights, and if there are any last questions, I'm going to bring Bronwyn on as well. There was a big section that we couldn't really answer, so I'm going to ask Bronwyn to give her opinion. So please just understand that this is really not, we can't really speculate about this, and if we do an answer, it would be pure speculation. But so many people in our section of what would you ask Flux Trends, if you could, was literally about where we're going to go financially and everything. So if anybody's read the Peter Bruce article, it's rather depressing about where we're going to go in 2025. But Bronwyn, do you have any kind of thoughts and linking it to just what we've been saying with what's happening with businesses and everything like that? As you said, it'll be an opinion. It won't be what we're going to put our heads on a block for. But let's see what you can say about the future of the economy in South Africa.
The future economy. Well, there's good news and there's bad news. The bad news is that there's a lot of it, and we're not going to get through this without some pain. I think that South Africa has, over the last few decades, chosen policy of kicking can further down the road rather than taking pain as it comes. And that means that there is a reckoning due from an economic perspective. We can see this in all the figures. I mean, we headed for perhaps even up to 50% real unemployment, which is a real problem. But like always, we like to see things in a slightly different way at Flux, and that's to say that the more problems there are, the more opportunities there are to solve those problems. And this is where businesses are made, always in difficult times. And the bigger the constraints we have, the more creative we can be, and the more need there is to explore new ideas and new business models, particularly business models that are more about multiplying value rather than dividing value, which we see quite a lot of. So there's opportunities for builder businesses as opposed to just sort of platform toll collecting type businesses, which are of course very exciting if you're a startup and you're wanting to get, you know, a large sum of VC funding money. It's great for you, but how sustainable are those businesses to solve the real challenges ahead for us? Because we really do have to batten down those hatches in terms of finance and general economic outlook. We have to be prepared for a longer, sharper shock than perhaps a lot of the rest of the world would have. But to end on a more positive note, South Africans are good at making plans, and we are good at dealing with crises. It's all about how we approach them. And if we see every problem as something that can be turned into an opportunity, we face the future with a lot more resilience than if we adopt a defeatist attitude. But I think the biggest thing that we can all do as individuals, as organizations, and as a nation is to accept that we need to take some of the pain and pay for some of our past mistakes sooner rather than later, because the further we try to kick those cans down the road, the bigger the eventual reckoning will be. So that would be my sort of general overview of where we headed, for better or for worse.
Thanks, Bronwyn. We're going to start closing down. So if you have any last questions for both Bronwyn and I'm going to just ask Bronwyn to stay on screen now. But if you've got any questions of anything that we've covered, please just post them now, either in the chats or in the Q&A. But otherwise, we can just look at the chat. But just to close off, I just wanted to go through a few things that I've been picking up just to sum up where we really, really are at the moment. I watched an interesting article. It was the CEO of Tsokosan the other night on the NCA, and the anchor was saying, you know, so they were talking obviously about the hospitality industry, and you know, they said so when the pandemic is over, and he stopped and said, no, we need to change that. We need to stop thinking, okay, there's going to be the stop and start, and when this pandemic is over. And he said we should rather reframe it is when we start learning how to manage this. And if you really look at it, so yes, there's, you know, sort of these positive things of, you know, that we might have this virus, but actually to develop that virus, to manufacture it, to distribute it around the whole world. And, you know, as we've been saying at Flux, this is not the first pandemic that's gonna hit us. So we need to start learning and adapt to this. And, you know, if you look at from The Economist to different of the financial kind of publications, you know, they're all saying, you know, the most encouraging thing is that we're going to only kind of start turning over in probably Q2 of 2021. So there's a long stretch for us to go. One of the things that from the Global Index survey, they said almost 3 in 4 people, so, you know, that's a really high percentage, think it's more important than before the outbreak for companies to behave more sustainably. So we've been saying that for a long time, is that sustainability, climate change, all of that started coming onto the radar and was reaching a tipping point in 2019. So don't forget where we left off consumer mindset, and then add to that what has really, really changed with that. I'm saying to all businesses that we come across and we chat to is, you've got to really sit down and have a very, very long, hard look at your business and reassess the relevance of your business and how it fits into a changed mindset. It's not just about reopening. We all want to reopen. We want to get the economy going. But if you just open your doors and expect things to be the same as 2019, you forget that everybody has had a bit of an existential crisis at home and that everything has changed. So from the Financial Times Weekender from this weekend, I just took a quote from the editorial. They said, many companies have little choice but to begin some revamping of their business models. The pandemic, and this is really sort of sends a chill down my spine as a business owner, and I think for anybody business owner, the pandemic has made sure that either their customers are no longer where they were or have no need for what they are selling. And that's a really, really like a hard love, tough love kind of thing there. The customers are no longer where they were, or they have no need of what you were selling. So what is the relevance of that? And I'm going to end off with one last case study. This one I thought was brilliant. So this is, an example of a great collaboration and relevance. So this is a removal company called Bumble, and they collaborated with a canned wine company called Babe. So you ask, what on earth has canned wine and removals got to do with a business collaboration? But the trend is lockdown breakup. So we've seen around the world divorce rates really start spiking because of lockdown, and just people are breaking up and they can't stand being with each other anymore. So they've created this fantastic service. You get a $600 gift card from Bumble for your moving fees. You get a $100 gift card from Babe for some liquid solace, they say, in a dark time, so you can console yourself. But I love this. Beyond the monetary prize, Bumble also promises to handcraft or hand tailor the perfect profile for newly singled mover. And they will help in, and they quote, remove all traces of your ex from your phone as an add-on service. So for me, that one was really, really a great case study there. So I'm just going to see what final questions that we have, and on the screen is exactly what we're doing today. But it's a service we offer. We call it executive closed door sessions or pre-strategy sessions. But what we presented to you today has been essentially our Trend Spotter in resident service. So it's like ask the Trend Spotters there. So there's a few questions. Tracy, I think Bronnan's asked that, your opinion on SA Outlook. We really don't have a concrete one to do that, and I don't think any countries really have that answer. So I'm afraid, Bronnan, you've got an answer. So
I would say diversify as much as you can. Just like I said, don't build your business upon one platform. I think it's a good time to look at and see how you can get revenue streams that aren't entirely rand based. Do the same thing for your assets in general, because the world is going to be quite difficult going ahead, and there is going to be economic pain. We're not going to get through this in a sort of a nice, happy, as they were saying, little U-shaped recovery. We have quite a deep recovery we have to go through. You've got to remember, we've come into junk state at the same time we walked into COVID. So we had pretty much the perfect storm. This is bad, but at the same time, I'm optimistic that longer run, it's actually a good thing, because it's accelerated a lot of the economic rot underneath the systems, and it's forcing us to reckon with it. And I've definitely noticed, and you can check this if you look at the sort of news and media sentiment, how suddenly the magnifying glass has been focused on our bigger issues, and we're going to have to reckon with them. So hopefully it'll bring that can kicking to a stop. We'll have to take the pain, and then we'll be able to rebuild and move on. That would be the more optimistic scenario for me. So I would say seeing a shorter, sharper shock here would be a good thing for us in the long run for South Africa.
I'll answer one from Alana. How do we help staff wellness in terms of digital fatigue? Now that our meetings are online, over the phone, there's less face-to-face time. we'd like to stay connected, but recognize staff is spending a lot of time online. That's a huge problem. Just screen fatigue, and that is a universal thing. And I think as business owners, and I think employees as well, is to understand that we need to really segment our lives. We have to have that. It's what all freelancers kind of deal with when they become freelancers, is understanding that you've got to have a separate place. So if you are able to, as a workspace, you close that down. You literally and physically lock that room when you're down there, to be able to tell people, I'm not available 24/7. We can't just call on people all the time. You've got to respect people's boundaries, and then reach out. So those little case studies about food vouchers, maybe there's the Uber Eats thing, or but also just checking in. I think what's come across with all the research that we've done is just the appreciation of people checking in on each other and saying, are you okay? And it's really okay to say, I'm not okay, because I think we've reached that period. We're going to our 5th month of lockdown. People are starting to unravel, and I think that's what we need to really do there. So I hope I've helped with that answer. Bron, maybe you can take the one from Nick. So should we be selling services or building services, at least for the foreseeable future?
Well, I'm not even sure that's the right question to ask. I think the better question to ask there would be to say, what need are we fulfilling? What problem are we solving? So that can be done through selling things or through building things. But I think it's definitely key not to start with, how do I get money out of my customers? I think we all know this. If you've worked in sales or marketing, the more desperate you are to get the sale in the door, the more those sales seem to disappear, because we're focusing on what we can get out of the exchange rather than what we can solve, what we can add value to on the other side of the deal. So I think the best thing you can do right now is to, as Dion was saying earlier, to truly listen to what those needs are, to what those shifting needs are. Needs are shifting quite quickly now. People's lives are changing, they're adapting and readapting, which means that those opportunities are emerging and re-emerging at quite a fast rate at the moment. So you need to be aware of that. So keep listening to what is required from your marketplace, and then look at how you can, as Dion was saying earlier, with the pivot, to see how you can move your current strength set into solving different problems in different areas. And that might require building, or it might just actually require taking things that you already have and offering it to a new marketplace. And I think some of the lesser explored opportunities here would be going into the international market once again, because it has definitely opened up a lot of doors, being locked into lockdown for businesses across the world, to say there's not a barrier to entry to hire a South African service, for example. I think Gray and Coddington posted something quite interesting on social media this week with 2 of his acquaintances, one of which was a yoga teacher and one was a Pilates instructor. And the yoga teacher has been devastated and she doesn't know how she's going to pay her bills because she can't teach her classes, whereas the Pilates instructor started posting workout videos and has now picked up an international audience, has never had such a good economic quarter ever. So it's about seeing that opportunity and about taking the old products to new markets and new products to new markets. So the building is a good thing, but it's not necessarily the only way to solve those problems.
Okay, thanks. One last question we're going to take is from Masana. Hi, Masana. And maybe we've just got both. I'll let you answer, and then I'll do a closing one there. Bron, so Masana saying the deep recessions triggered by the pandemic are expected to leave long-lasting scars worldwide in terms of low investments, erosion of human capital through lost work, retrenchment, schooling, fragmentation of a global trade and suppliers demand. Big question. What's your future outlook on this?
Well, there's 2 answers there once again, because what we've really seen in these last few months is the huge division between the real economy and the financialized economy. And right now, the financialized economy is doing very, very well, whereas the real economy is really struggling. But I think there's going to be a lag effect then. We're going to see that flip, because at the moment, if you want an example of that, you can see how those top 5 tech stocks in the US account for something like 20% of the US stock market at the moment, just 5 companies. And a lot of the value from the helicopter drops has been sort of sucked into those. We're seeing this huge disconnect between the real world and the sort of numbers on the screen. So it seems like all the rules have come unstuck. But eventually that does have to flip, it has to pivot, because at the end of the day, we are real people with real needs, and the real essential services and goods and services are part of the real economy. So the real economy is things like we need to eat, we need to live, we need shelter, we need all of that stuff. So sooner or later, those needs don't disappear. Although we've had like a demand and a supply shock at the moment, those marketplaces are going to bounce back. Where the longer term damage is going to come as we start to see how unnecessary a lot of those very financialized, very successful, but very superficial business models simply can't sustain themselves without a functioning real economy. It can only run ahead of the reckoning for so long. And hopefully we will see a closer merging of value tied to real goods, real services, and real wealth, rather than this hugely artificial separation we've seen right now. So once again, it's a two-sided answer where we're going to have to deal with some sort of reckoning. So it's not going to be a pleasant period, but hopefully what emerges out of that is a greater understanding of where real value really lies. And I think that we are coming full circle to that, because our markets have become too separated from reality for our own good.
Thanks, Bronwyn. And Masana, I'll just put my 2 cents in, just also reframing it maybe slightly differently. Is, what I've been saying is that we left 2019 at a bit of a tipping point. Politically, there was chaos around the world. You're just sort of seeing that come through. We put our first trend briefing as the politics of rage and polarization. You're seeing that just really come through. The pandemic has hit through that as well, but things like sustainability, climate change, all of that kind of thing, the fast fashion cycles, there's so many things that we're just having that big wake-up call now. Like Bronwyn says, it's what's the real economy? What is really important to us, and how do we do things? And like the case study of the yoga instructor and the Pilates instructor, the people that have actually worked on the business and not just in the business have found those opportunities there. And I think at Flux we are kind of eternal optimists. We do see the opportunity in lots of disruption and chaos. So we enjoy that. It's very uncomfortable for a lot of people, but I think that's what kind of feeds us. So we are a little bit over time. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the ones that have been staying with us up to the end. If you liked what you've seen, I think this is just the first foray, because what we do is normally, Bronwyn and we host masterclasses at different business colleges. But I think what this has really taught us is that there is a need for this. And what we might do is start launching different masterclasses for specific sectors. So we can really do that and use us as that trend spotter in residence function. To kind of go deeper into what your specific problems are. This was a very general one about challenges within a lockdown, but we'll be back with a lot more. And don't forget, if you want to see what we see, literally, we have a new service of trend cards. You can subscribe to them, and basically that is our way of picking up little bleeps on the radar around the world, and we use our acronym TRENDS: technology, retail, state of the economy, the natural world, diplomacy, and social and cultural trends. You get a snapshot of what Flux sees now. And so as the last slide it says, now's the time to rethink. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you will see us, hope to see you again at our next open session, or otherwise our next masterclass. Thank you so much for our panelists and for you joining us today. Have a good day and strength for the next 6 months. Thank you very much.